Welcome back, everybody, to our weekly sermonette. I hope everybody's doing well and coping with these trying times of the stay-at-home orders. And as we now are slowly opening up step by step, hopefully it should go smooth and safe. And look forward to all coming together very, very soon. This week is Parshas Emor. It's a parsha that talks about all the holidays. It's actually, we read sections of this during the holidays. It enumerates all of the biblical holidays that we celebrate during the year. But sometimes people focus on holidays as a very, very important day. But there's a famous trick question, which the question is, what is the most important day on the Jewish calendar? And the answer to that is today. Today is the most important day. The past is history, the future is a mystery. Today is a gift from God, and that's why it's called the present. And therefore, the question is today, how can I become a better person? How can I bring out the greater potential that there is within myself? How can I live happier? How can I have a better outlook on life? These trying times sometimes put us down and put us into a negative mood. And therefore, I'd like to actually focus today and perhaps the next few weeks during the time of the Omer period. As we mentioned in the past, we read Pirkei Avos, we focus on changing our character. Perhaps we can learn a few things that can assist us to be able to change a little bit of who and what we are and how we look at the world. I'm reminded of a joke about this fellow who comes, the story is told that he goes to the Kotel and he meets Mr. Rappaport, and he looks at Mr. Rappaport, he says, "Mr. Rappaport, you've changed. You used to be tall and skinny, now you're short and fat. You used to have no hair, now you have a hair implant. You've changed so much. I wouldn't have recognized you." And the guy says, "My name is not Rappaport." He goes, "Wow, you changed your name too?" Sometimes it's difficult when we talk about changing who we are, but the truth is it's not so difficult. And what I'd like to talk today is about having a positive attitude. There's a story told about a fellow who ran a newspaper for many, many, many years. And he had a private audience with the Lubavitch Rebbe, and he told the Rebbe that, our newspaper is totally objective, with no bias. And that's what we strive for. And the Rebbe turned around to him and, the Rebbe told him, he says, he used the word that we're independent and totally objective with no bias. And the Rebbe says, independent perhaps, but no bias? And what the Rebbe was saying is that, the truth is we all have a bias. And bias is not necessarily a bad thing. It's when we have a negative bias, or, we are who we are based on our past experiences, past views. And the Rebbe was saying, yes, could be you're not beholden to any particular organization. Perhaps you're not beholden to any particular ideology, but we each have a bias. Our previous life makeup and experiences affect us to the point that we look at life through a different set of frames, through a different set of lenses, which affects how we look at ourselves, how we look at others, how we look at the world around us, and the greater worldview as a whole. And therefore, it's really, sometimes, when somebody comes to a doctor, you try to treat the symptom, but you know what? If we could treat the illness, the symptom would go away. And therefore, I'd like to focus today not so much on how we look at any particular situation, but perhaps we could change our biases. And if we could change that, then everything else will change as well. And one of the greatest teachers, my teacher, the Lubavitch Rebbe, has had an amazing positive way of looking at the world that I think we all can learn from that, and we can all gain something in our lives. And I want to share 3 very brief, quick stories of the Rebbe's view, how the Rebbe had an amazing positive view. And the first story is that there was once this, in a far away city, there was a shul, and the shul had a minyan, and they had trouble getting a minyan. And there was one man who used to always come to be able to be the 10th man in the minyan, but he never participated in services. And he always sat there the whole time during services reading his newspaper. And there was one of the individuals in the shul, it bothered him really, really much that this fellow was sitting there with a newspaper. He felt it was so disrespectful for him to sit in the synagogue while everybody's praying and just reading his daily newspaper. And he shared that with the Rebbe, and he said he didn't know what to do. And the Rebbe turned the whole situation around. He goes, wow, here you have an individual who is living physically far, but also emotionally far, to the point that he really doesn't appreciate what prayer is really all about. And yet, he is willing to come to shul to be the 10th man to the minyan. He's willing to be able to do something that he's able to do that will help others and what's important to them. The Rebbe looked at it, he says, this is a holy Jew. This is a Jew who finds himself in exile and is still making the effort to be able to show up in shul, to be able to be present. Shul is important, and he is connecting with God in the best way that he knows how. Wow, that didn't change the circumstances. It just changed the view of those circumstances of how we look at another and how we look at a situation. Second story is one that I've shared previously, but I don't think all have heard it. It's the famous story about how in 1968 there was Shirley Chisholm was at that time, she was elected to represent New York 12th congressional district, and it was the first time that an African American woman was elected to the Congress. Long story short, what happened was the Good Old Boys Network decided they're going to fix her wagon. And they appointed her to a committee, the Agricultural Committee. Here she was, an African-American woman who was trying to help the inner city situation of Brooklyn, New York. And all of a sudden they put her on an Agricultural Committee where she knows nothing about, something about mid-America. And she was very, very depressed. As a matter of fact, New York Times at the time mocked at that time and says, the title was, Does a Tree Grow in Brooklyn? And she tells the story how all of a sudden she got a call from the secretariat of the Lubavitcher Rebbe that he would like to meet with her. And she came to meet with the Rebbe, and the Rebbe told her that, whatever God does is for a purpose. And she has her wishes that she wants to be able to accomplish for the underprivileged in America. And the Rebbe said to her that you were put on the Agricultural Committee. Mid-America has so much extra food. Perhaps something can be done with that food to be helped the underprivileged. And the first days that she shows up in Congress, she actually meets up with Bob Dole. And Bob Dole knows that she's on the Agricultural Committee, and he laments to her and he says, we have a problem now that there's import has become so prevalent. We have a problem with all this extra food that the farmers are producing. And all of a sudden a light bulb went up in her head. He said, the rabbi from Brooklyn, the rabbi said that there's extra food. What can we do with it? And together with Bob Dole, they actually started what was known at the time as still as the WIC, the food stamp program. And the food stamp program is to take the extra that the government would buy these extra food from mid-America farmers and be able to give them to those underprivileged and those that don't have. And later in 1973, actually, there was an act, I forgot the name of the Agricultural Act, that was implemented that every state has to implement this act and to be able to provide for the needs of the underprivileged. And they started the WIC program. Make a long story short, when she actually retired from Congress and everybody was thanking her for her amazing accomplishments with these governmental programs of food stamps and WIC, she said that actually the thanks goes to a rabbi in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, who had an amazing positive view and actually encouraged me that if God put me in a certain place at a certain time, there's something that I can do about it. So if there's babies and mothers and underprivileged that have now milk and food every single day on their tables because of these programs, it's thanks to the Lubavitcher Rebbe in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, who had an amazing positive view. And the third story I'd like to share was, some might know that actually in 1977, in the fall of 1977, it was the second to the last day of the holiday, Shmini Atzeres, the night before Simchas Torah, the Lubavitcher Rebbe suffered a massive heart attack. And it was a major setback, and doctors were brought in. And one of the cardiologists, the Rebbe wanted to actually have, within 48 hours, the Rebbe usually gave a talk to the whole community. And the Rebbe wanted to go and give this talk that he has given for the last 28 years before that on the holiday of Simchas Torah. And the Rebbe wanted to give that talk. And the doctor told the Rebbe, he says, listen, you need to understand that if you don't take care of yourself, there's a 25% chance that you will have a relapse and have another heart attack. And then the doctor said to the Rebbe, he says, Rebbe, he says, do you understand what this means? And the Rebbe says, yes, I do understand what it means. He says, I plan to take care of myself. But what you said was that even if I don't take care of myself, there's a 75% chance that I will not have a relapse ever again. That is the view. That is that positive view, that looking at every situation in a much more positive view. And, to be able to have this positive view is actually a challenge, because the scientists tell us that there is a concept called negativity bias, that we actually think negatively. For example, in our day's experience, we can have many, many times where good things happen to us and we hear good news, or somebody compliments us. And you know what? That just goes through like a sieve. It doesn't. We enjoy it for the moment. But if we have a negative experience, it lives in our brain for much, much longer. For example, if 9 people complimented you today, that feels great for the moment, but then you move on. And then if one person, you have one negative experience, at the end of the day, which ones are you going to remember? The 9 positive experience or the one negative experience? And human nature is that we will linger and hold on to that negative experience. Now, just science also tells us, there's a very interesting fun fact, that people that live with negative attitudes in life actually live shorter. And that one has a positive attitude, they have 11 to 15% chance of living much, much longer than somebody who thinks negatively. So what we have to do is we actually have to work on it. This is not something that comes naturally to us. There's nurture, there's nature, and there's experiences. We need to work on ourselves. As a matter of fact, the Rebbe once told somebody that it's only because of his life experiences that had he not had this positive attitude, he doesn't know if he would have been able to survive because of past experience. So what we have to do is realize that we all have a bias. But you know what? We can work on that bias. And we could change through which lenses we look at the world. We're not stuck in it. And we are able to do that. We're able to change our premises, our foundations of how we look at the world. And through that, it'll change with lenses what we see in the world, which will impact who we are and what we are. And, we have to know that ultimately, positivity is a matter of choice. It's not a matter of circumstances, that it's something that we derive from our perspective, and it's not from our personalities. So let us hope that we can all change through which lenses we see things, and take this time of the Omer period as we prepare for Shavuos coming up in a couple of weeks. We should be able to change our perspective of who we really are, to change who we really are. And through that, we should merit long life, happiness, health. And let us hope that very, very soon this situation should come to end, and we should come out of it actually different people. In a sense, sometimes we could be thankful. That'll be the silver lining, is that if we're able to change who we are and what we are, then we will come out as better and stronger. And we've advertised yesterday how we're having a drive-by Lag BaOmer experience at Chabad this coming Tuesday evening. We hope to see all y'all, as they say down south. Come by to say hello, we should be able to see each other and greet each other. And this should be the first step We have lots of nice, fun activities that we're going to have there for everybody to be able to see as they drive by. But let us hope that this should be the first step, that very quickly and speedily we should be able to all be together in a happy, positive situation. And I look forward, actually, in the next couple of weeks, focusing on this idea of changing ourselves and working on our positive attitudes. Shabbat Shalom. Hope you're all doing well. Feel free to reach out to us with anything you might want, need, or can think about, or anybody else you know out there that might need something. Please reach out to us, and wishing you all a Shabbat Shalom, and look forward to seeing you soon.